Wrongfully Deported, the story of Calmar Abrego Garcia and the president who refused to bring him back. Imagine this. You're living in the United States. You've built your life here. You follow the rules. You've been granted legal protection that says you cannot be deported, because going back to your home country could mean danger, even death. Then one day, immigration officials show up, detain you and fly you to a foreign country you haven't lived in for years. No explanation, no process, just a one-way ticket out. And when the courts finally admit a mistake has been made, the president says no. That's not fiction. That's the real-life story of Calmar Abrego Garcia, a man who now sits trapped in El Salvador, held by a government that won't release him, while the US president refuses to bring him home. This case is more than just a mistake. It's a constitutional crisis unfolding in real time, a legal standoff between the judicial and executive branches, raising serious questions about the power of the courts, the role of the presidency, and whether justice still means anything when it's inconvenient. So, how did we get here? Calmar Abrego Garcia was living in Maryland when Immigration and Customs Enforcement, or ICE, detained him and deported him to El Salvador. The problem? Garcia wasn't supposed to be deported at all. He had a court order protecting him, known as withholding of removal. That status is granted when an immigrant proves that returning to their home country would likely lead to persecution or torture. In Garcia's case, a judge agreed. That protection was meant to be ironclad, but somehow, despite it, ICE deported him anyway. The US government later admitted it was a mistake, a bureaucratic error, a paperwork failure. Call it what you will, it was a violation of federal law. Garcia ended up in El Salvador, a country he hadn't lived in for years, a place that is, for many, extremely dangerous, especially for those accused of gang affiliations. And almost immediately, El Salvador's government declared Garcia a threat to national security. They claimed, without evidence, that he was affiliated with MS-13 or Sombra Negra, two violent criminal organizations. But no court, US or Salvadoran, has ever proven those claims. There's zero documented evidence tying him to any gang. Still, he remains detained. Back in the United States, the case quickly escalated, lawyers appealed, advocacy groups spoke out, and then something rare happened. The United States Supreme Court intervened. In a unanimous 9-0 decision, the court ruled that the government must facilitate Garcia's return. The keyword here, facilitate, is at the center of this storm. On the surface, it sounds clear. If the United States deports someone by mistake and the Supreme Court rules they must come back, the government should do everything in its power to make that happen. But President Trump's administration has interpreted the word very differently. Rather than acting to bring Garcia back, they claim the ruling only means the United States must remove domestic obstacles to his return. In other words, they'll stop blocking him from coming back, but they won't help bring him back. It's a textbook example of strategic ambiguity, seizing on vague legal language to dodge responsibility. Former federal judge Shira Scheindlin said it best. This isn't just narrow interpretation, it's disingenuous. Because the truth is, the United States has the diplomatic and economic power to bring Garcia back if it wanted to. The president could pick up the phone, call El Salvador's president and say, "We made a mistake, send him home." That would likely be the end of it. But Trump hasn't done that. Instead, his administration is using Garcia's situation as political leverage, linking it to the broader narrative of cracking down on immigration, crime, and so-called threats to national security. Even more disturbing, Trump is now reportedly asking his advisors to study whether violent US citizens, people born in America, could be deported to El Salvador. Legal experts say this idea is completely unconstitutional. There's no legal authority to deport American citizens. None. Full stop. But the fact that the president is publicly toying with the idea is a massive red flag. Because what's really at stake here isn't just Garcia's life. It's the balance of power in our democracy. It's the very principle that no one is above the law, not even the president. Right now, the judiciary has spoken, the courts have ruled, and yet the executive branch is refusing to comply. That's not just political posturing, it's defiance of a direct order from the Supreme Court. The district court handling the case has few tools left. It might hold the government in contempt. That would trigger a lengthy appeals process, likely landing back in the Supreme Court, but until then, Garcia remains in limbo. And so does the American rule of law? Because let's be honest, if the government can ignore a unanimous ruling from the highest court in the land, what can it ignore? If legal protections like withholding of removal can be violated with no consequences, then how safe is anyone? And if a U.S. citizen can be branded a criminal without trial and threatened with deportation, what happens to due process? What happens to democracy? This is no longer just an immigration story, it's a constitutional crisis, one that exposes the fragile seams of American justice. It's worth noting that part of this chaos comes from the Supreme Court's own wording. Legal scholars say the court's use of the word facilitate instead of something more forceful like must return by a specific date gave the Trump administration just enough wiggle room to stall. That vagueness, however unintentional, has allowed the president to spin, deflect, and ultimately delay any action. And now, here we are. A man who should be in Maryland is locked up in El Salvador. The president says the courts have no authority over foreign policy. His advisors claim the ruling was actually a win for the administration. Meanwhile, the man at the center of all this? Forgotten, trapped, discarded by the system that was supposed to protect him. But we shouldn't forget him, because Calmar Abrego Garcia's story is more than just one man's tragedy. It's a warning. It's a reminder that rights only matter when they're upheld, that justice only exists when those in power choose to enforce it, and that in a nation built on laws, no one, not even the president, should be able to ignore a court order and walk away. If Garcia can be disappeared over a technicality, held without trial, labeled a terrorist without evidence, and denied return by his own government, what does that mean for the rest of us? Because if the system fails one person so completely, it can fail us all.